Hey, my friends. So, been a while. Kind of haven't had a lot to chat about. Couple things, but nothing really that grabbed me until the Ithaca Saga, the final saga, the ninth saga in Epic the Musical. So, first, let me just say a big, big thanks to my youngest boy for introducing me to Epic the Musical way back a year or so ago. And I must say that it made my heart sing for the following reasons. Um, I am and have always been a huge, huge, unabashed fan of musicals. So, brief history. When I was 4 months old, my mother took me to see A Sound of Music. And I was hooked ever since. I have been dragging myself and whoever I could manage to see musicals ever since I was a young child. I remember going to school in England and our school going to see a live performance of Peter Rabbit. And oh no, not Peter Rabbit, Peter and the Wolf. And I was just mesmerized. I needed to learn everything I could about the different sections of the orchestra, the instrumentations, the sounds, the characterizations, the voices. I was just mesmerized. In grade 6, I'm almost embarrassed to say this. I went on a date, and for that date, I took my date to Man of the Mantra live. With Richard Kiley, mind you, the original Man of the Mantra, Richard Kiley. I was floored. I don't think she was particularly impressed, but I was floored. A couple of years later, in grade 8, during graduation week, I dressed up as the Man of the Mantra, turned my hockey stick into a horse, and ran from class to class, reciting songs, singing them from the musical. And in my own class, I did a beautiful, might I say, rendition of "To Dream the Impossible Dream." All through high school, I sang and performed, danced a little in musicals that our theater company put on. I went back and forth between the orchestra pit because I'm also a musician. So while I didn't sing in Fiddler on the Roof, I did play the lead clarinet in the orchestra section for Fiddler on the Roof. And my kids will tell you this. For about a decade, I was obsessed. I'm still obsessed with not just Phantom of the Opera, but dare I say, Les Mis. I've seen Les Mis performed in at least 3 languages in 4 different countries on 3 different continents. Wherever I am living at any given point in time, I will try and see Les Mis. And there was a time when I was busy working on stats analyses for the Department of Education here in the U.S., where at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm busy working on stuff. And I'll wake up the kids because I've got the headphones in to the original Broadway soundtrack of Les Mis. And I'm just busy doing hierarchical linear modeling, structural equation modeling. And I'm just belting him out, waking him up. It was... They were not impressed. Probably neither with my singing, nor the fact that I was waking them the fuck up right before school. Now, why do I bring this up? I bring this up because I am just over the moon, overjoyed that my children have inherited a love of music in very different ways. But it appears that my youngest has a love of Broadway, shall I say, musicals, the way that I have. And he found it very organically on his own. And I love that he has, and that he feels comfortable sharing it with me, as well as the rest of the family, is quite wonderful as well. Um, so it is quite nice that on this wonderful holiday, whether you share Christmas as a holiday or not, on this wonderful holiday, that despite Poseidon coming back to wreak havoc on the listening party on Christmas Eve from Ithaca, uh, the final saga was released, and it is wonderful. It is fabulous. We had a little bit of a disagreement, my son and I, because I felt that Odysseus didn't pay enough for the killing of the baby and all of his friends. I felt that he should have got his happy ending and, been with his wife, reunited with Penelope and Telemachus. And then, as he told at the end of the last saga, as he told Poseidon, I'll sleep with my wife, right next to my wife. And then he wakes up dead the next morning. So he got his happy ending, but there had to be some sort of retribution other than, wandering the desert for 20 years for killing the baby and killing all his friends and all of that stuff. Got no problem killing the monsters and stuff. But I felt there needed to be more. My son said, no, that was enough. He paid enough. Let him have his happy ending. And sure enough, he got his happy ending. I'm okay with that. So, okay, whatever. But anyway, it is sheer brilliance. And again, as someone who has partaken of these, enjoyed these for the overwhelming majority of my life, Epic the Musical is wondrous and magical in so many ways. And after watching the full listening party this morning, Jorge, I feel, as many of us in the fandom feel, like we're on a first name basis with him. I feel, he says, this is not the end, because this is just the concept album, the full concept album. This is not the end of Epic, the musical. It is just the beginning. So this begs the question, what is next for Epic, the musical? And that's the question that I'd like to kind of like speculate on. As someone who knows a little bit about Broadway, processes that go into Broadway, creating of a musical, that seems to be the next logical step. And I have some questions, because the process of taking something like Epic to Broadway is Epic exponentially on a whole other scale. So let's briefly get into that and see what could possibly be next for Epic, the musical. So I'd like to just, by comparison, not in terms of, music and tone and blah, 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 but just by comparison in terms of process, talk about another epic kind of like subversive musical of its time, Rent. And the reason I bring this up is because how many of you can, off the top of your head, name the person who wrote Rent? A young writer, composer, by every measure, a genius, somewhat a subversive person, who tragically died before opening night of Rent, his seminal musical. I think it's fair to say that we were robbed of so many more possible musicals from him. with his tragic death. His name, by the way, is Jonathan Larson. Now, the reason I bring it up is because, yes, Rent eventually ended up on Broadway. Yes, huge stars, not the least of which were Taye Diggs and Idina Menzel, were born out of the original Broadway cast of Rent. Yes, Rent went on to have a film, mediocre film, moderate success. But all of that was outside of the traditional Broadway stage process. And yes, it did have a Broadway theatrical run. Rent was done outside of the traditional Broadway process. Broadway, much like Nashville, is very incestuous. They have a system. If you do stuff within the system, they will build you up. They will support you. They will get you going. Wicked is a very good example. It was done by Broadway insiders. It was funded by Broadway insiders. It was written by Broadway people. And now it is huge, huge motion picture. Rent, it came, it became big outside of the Broadway system. It became big in spite of not really being supported in a major way by Broadway. And much like Epic, it is much more modern in its musical stylings than traditional Broadway fare. And it had its success, it had its run, and 20, 30 years later, people are hard-pressed to remember the people who were involved with Rent, or even what Rent was, or what it was about, which, by the way, was the beginning of the AIDS crisis. I pray to God I'm wrong, but I fear that Epic is on a similar path. Epic is born outside of the traditional Broadway process. Broadway seems to be the next logical step, a big stage production. And this was largely self-funded, crowd-funded, shall we say, in terms of the creation of the concept album. It is fair to say that the mounting of a stage production for Epic would be epic in and of itself on an exponentially large level. Just looking at the animatics for the 9 sagas, 2 acts of this musical, there are some huge sets and productions that would have to, just think about 12 ships on the ocean, Poseidon, the giants, the destruction of 11 of those ships, the throwing of the boulders. How do you capture that? The killing of over 500 people. How do you capture that in a Broadway set? It can be done. The staging of that would be epic. Now, that's expensive, obviously. Where things are expensive like that, there comes Broadway financiers. And the people who finance Broadway, let's be perfectly honest, they're pricks. You don't get to be a Broadway financier by being magnanimous. You get to be a Broadway financier by thinking that you know better than anybody else you're a goddamn control freak. And that is my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that the next step will present the greatest clash, shall we say, between Jorge's creative vision, his ability to control his creative vision, which has been incredible so far, and having to juxtapose or that tension between maintaining his voice, both literally and figuratively, and maintaining control, and ceding that control to the people putting over the money. Crowdfunding is one thing, but some dick in New York putting over 25 to 30 million, not to mention other producers, not to mention the director, and ultimately the director has creative control over casting, over that kind of stuff. When you think about what Jorge has been able to do, he has shown such maturity and has such a clear, crystal clear creative vision. And the production that he has been able to do and let's be perfectly honest, we're not talking Jonas Brothers super level production dollars here. There's not a lot of, he's got enough money to work with, but we're not talking a lot of money to work with. We're not talking goddamn Taylor Swift money to work with here. And his ear, oh my freaking God, his castmates, he chose through open auditions, he chose each one of those voices. And they're perfectly cast. They are impeccable. Now imagine a version of Epic where his voice wasn't, his ear wasn't the one that made those decisions. And that's the risk of the next version of Epic. That in order to go to the next level, if that next level is getting onto a national stage as a stage production, that is going to involve a battle of wills to some degree. And it is my hope that if Epic does become staged as a Broadway musical of some sort, it is my hope that it is self-funded. It is my hope that Jorge maintains creative control. It is my hope that as many of the original voice cast are maintained as possible. It is my hope that Jorge directs it. And it is my hope that he gets all of the flowers as humanly possible, and that you remember his name in the way that nobody remembers Jonathan Larson's name. Hey, my friends. So, just a quick kind of epilogue end note. So, again, big thanks to my son for sharing with me his love and passion for Epic the musical. And as I said earlier in this video, I kind of hope that I'm wrong about things. However, I have been around this scene long enough to at least know that my fears are grounded. So hopefully, whatever the next step for Epic is, it will be wondrous. It will be joyful. I know I will be there. I know that my son will be there. And I would like to thank, with all of my heart, Jorge and the cast of Epic for giving me something that I can share with my son. Something that I truly love from the bottom of my heart. And something that he shares from the bottom of his heart. And that we share together. And that is a gift that I don't think I can ever repay. So the words thank you seem incredibly inaccurate. But thank you. Namaste.